Riding mountain bikes to me is just the freedom of expressing yourself. Until you feel that feeling, it's a feeling that's indescribable. Sometimes when life gets pretty hectic, I want to just escape and get away from all the hustle and bustle and just get up out into the hills and get some fresh air in my lungs. In Scotland, you can have all 4 seasons in one day. You can have snow, wind, rain, sun, you name it, Scotland will throw it at you. And a lot of the time, it's the worst of the weathers. On these technical climbs, if you're just going through shin-deep muds on a normal bike, you're going to get off and walk, and chances are your shoes are going to get covered in mud and your feet are going to get soggy. On an e-bike, you just whack it into turbo, power through it, use the motor to your advantage, and you're just absolutely loving life as you're ripping on through. For me, mountain biking is all about the descents. That's where I have the fun. So if I can get 3 or 4 or 5 times as many runs down, it makes so much sense to me to ride an e-bike over a normal mountain bike. If you find joy and happiness in something, just embrace it, love it, and try and do it as often as you can.
Hey, my name's Antoine. I'm a documentary filmmaker, photographer in the outdoors and sports world. This film, we actually shot it almost 3 years ago. And because of other projects and other things that we've been working on, this thing has been at the bottom of the to-do list for a very, very long time. Having it at this stage, having it ready is a total relief. So the aim of this video is just to show you a little bit about my process, our process with Sam, how we went about making this project, and all the little things that went into making it something that would be commercially viable or interesting to the brand in question or other mountain bike brands. So trying to bring in a commercial element and showing how documentary can benefit brands and become a selling point in the work that you do. What we were looking to do here was create a commercial piece that took on the perspective of the athlete, Mark Duquette, who's an awesome human being, incredible bike rider, really good at loads of different disciplines. And initially, he was looking for people who could help him out to make a little edit to promote the company that he was writing for at the time, Ride On Bikes. We responded to that call eagerly and wanted to make something super cool with him that not only showed off the brand and the product, but also brought in a human perspective, something that as an audience you can relate to beyond just cool shots and cool products, which the internet's so full of that kind of stuff. I'm a firm believer that people buy from people, or they buy faces. They connect with people, they connect with identity, they connect with voice, especially when that identity and voice are consistent. So this project was very last minute. Mark reached out and was looking to work with someone within a month to 3 weeks. By the time we started working on it and had our conversations with him, he basically had 2 weeks until he was going to be flying off to New Zealand on an awesome bike riding adventure. And his days were very limited. So we decided to try and keep things as simple as possible. The first thing about documentary or storytelling is you want a narrative, you want a story, right? So to keep things simple, we decided to do an interview that didn't have cameras and lights. We thought we'll just record the interview and use a voiceover and then create our storyboard based on everything that was talked about in the voiceover. But before we could do that, we needed to know what the substance was, what the story was. So we did a bunch of pre-interviews. And if you don't know, a pre-interview is just when you meet or you call with the talent and you just ask them a bunch of questions. The name of the game here is really to find out more about the person, the character, what they want, what their objective is, whether that's within a specific time frame or in life or in a particular discipline. We were just looking for an angle that was unique to Mark. What he ended up telling us is that biking was a way for him to get out of the city, get out of stress, overwhelm, which is something a lot of people can relate to. And we loved that angle. We loved that it was something that Mark was essentially doing as a benefit to his mental health, which as a filmmaker, personally, I can relate to hugely. So we thought we'd incorporate that into the story.
Sometimes when life gets pretty hectic, I want to just escape and get away from all the hustle and bustle and just get up out into the hills and put some fresh air in my lungs.
The Scottish hills are pretty boggy and rainy and muddy all throughout the winter and a lot of the year, to be honest. So the fact that he was pushing through and riding in that mud was awesome. And because we were going to be shooting an e-bike, we thought that's perfect. If Mark is able to ride up and down hills all day in the mud and the bike is making that a lot easier for him, then we've kind of got our two angles. We've got our selling point on one hand for the bike and how the brand is enabling a particular lifestyle and helping Mark in his riding. And on the other hand, we've got a unique perspective and angle that is really specific to Mark and to his story, to his journey with mountain biking. So on the weekend of the shoot, we were really limited on time. And the best way to make use of that time for us was to plan everything out ahead of time, block by block, and figure out exactly how we were going to use each day so that we didn't waste a minute. And the benefit of that is you know exactly what's going to happen at what time and what shots you're going to grab where throughout the day, so that on the day, we would have as much creative flexibility and have room potentially for random things to occur, natural moments to pop out. We laid everything out onto a platform that we like using called Miro. It's essentially a big whiteboard, kind of like Milanote, but without having to click into loads of buttons. It's really just one big whiteboard where you can just put your brain out onto a map. And we put our ideas onto this map, the scenes, the references that we liked, some shot ideas, and a rough idea of how the whole thing was going to flow. And that was based on the pre-interview that we did with Mark. And then we just went out and shot the thing. So for the shoot, we blocked out a half day shooting in a studio in my bedroom, basically just adding some lights in and bringing in the idea that the Rad-On bike was charging Mark's session and bringing in more energy into what he was doing, enabling him to ride for longer. So we got really creative with our approach and how we shot that, and that was super fun. And the rest of the shoot was just trying to get as many angles as we possibly could on the hill and just building scenes to help tell the story that Mark had told us in his interview. We also had Miles with us, who is an unbelievable drone pilot, and we brought him on to bring in a more dynamic perspective so that we didn't get repetitive shots in the woods, all stagnant. We really wanted to show the dynamic trees rushing past as if you were on a bike riding through, and then contrast that with some intense closer up action where you're in and amongst the trees with him. And it came out really beautiful, so we're super stoked with that. And then of course there was a tiny little chunk of time that we allowed for actually recording the interview, which we did in Sam's van with a microphone just pressed up against Mark to try and get the cleanest sound that we could. And we basically just asked him the same questions as we'd asked him in the pre-interview to try and get as authentic and real a response as we could. Once we'd made the main hero piece, all that was left for us to do was make a bunch of cut downs that would make sense for a marketing team. And it's really important when you're making a spec project to understand what it is that you're trying to make. Is it a film? Is it content for social media? Is it an example campaign, the full whack? And in this case, that's what we were trying to do. We wanted to show that we could do a hero piece, a longer form narrative, documentary style piece, but that we were also capable of making social media content and formats that were short form and useful in an ad context, for example, and that made sense from a distribution perspective for a marketing team. Spec projects for me are an opportunity to practice new things, try things out, play around without having the pressure and the expectations that go with working on a commissioned piece. To me, there's nothing more fulfilling than working on a project and making it in the way that you want to make it, bringing in your voice, creating your style, having fun, and learning and growing as a filmmaker without the restrictions of a brief. And that's why I encourage you, anybody watching, to go out and make spec projects, as many as you can possibly make, because that's the stuff that people look at and go, hey, this guy's got a style, this guy's got something to say, you know, I want to work with him, or whatever it happens to be. So go out, make whatever strikes your fancy, and I'll catch you on the next video.